Hello and welcome to the Parsha class, Parsha Pinchas 5785, a jam-packed Parsha, lots to learn, Baruch Hashem, a lot of interesting questions that come up as you learn the Parsha. Of course, this Parsha always comes at the heels. The end of last week's Parsha is where Pinchas performs the act, killing a prince of Shimon, and at the same time a princess of Moab, in the same moment, and by doing so earns the reward that this parsha begins with. So, without any further ado, we'll just jump right into the parsha. There's a lot of questions, like I said, that come up with all of this, including. Um, just to start out with the very beginning, the verse says, "This is our source sheet available, hopefully in your email. If not, then if you're watching this on YouTube, and in the description section, you'll have the link to this Safari page created specifically for this class." All right, so the Parsha, chapter 25 in Bamidbar, verses 11 and 12 is where the Parsha begins. Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen, Heshiv et Hamati. Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aaron the Kohen, he has calmed my anger, Me'al Bnei Israel, from the Jewish people. The Jewish people deserved Hashem's ire at this point, his being upset, and Pinchas has calmed that down. Bikino et kinati betocham. His anger was very much inflamed against them. Betocham v'lo kaliti et bnei Israel bikinati, and the Jewish people would not have been able to survive. He would have Hashem would have destroyed the Jewish people at that point, and there was a giant plague that was stopped, as we see at the end of last week's parsha. 24,000 people had died, and maybe even more, many more would have, had not Pinchas done this very brave act. Therefore, says Hashem, I'm going to give him my covenant of peace. And there's a lot, like I said, to say on that very strange idea, being rewarded for really an act of zealotry. He killed people, and here he is being rewarded, and not just any reward, a reward of peace of some sort. There has to be some sort of explanation to this, and Baruch Hashem, there are. Now, before we begin with explanations, Rav Yosef Nehemiah Kornitzer, the last Rav of Krakow, wants us to know that the rabbis have two different teachings about this idea that need to be somehow more or less explained. The first comes from Kedushin, the Gemara in Kedushin 66b, where it says Shadushu Loshem Shalom. So they discuss this word Shalom, this covenant of peace that Pinchas gets. Od Amru Chazal Sheramzu Lo Mikan Matanot Kahunas Ro V'Chaim V'Keva. And they say that in another Gemara, they say that these are the gifts of the Kohanim. That this gift, this shalom, is the completeness comes from the fact that certain parts of the animal are given to the Kohanim during when those animals are shechted, including the jaw and the maw, etc. So those things are learned out from this word shalom. Why are these three given to the kohen? And there's different hints to this. Then, if you skip down, he says, as he explains, al derech tzchok, it's like a funny explanation. he says, "Yesh lefarish al pi sheshemati misefarim b'shem Hagon Rav Shaul Amsterdam." So you could learn something from an event that happened in the life of Rav Shaul Amsterdam, great Rav, the chief rabbi of Amsterdam. Shememav lo kiba matanod mibale batim. He never took gifts from his congregants. Ach b'sof yamav. Hitchil lekabel. At the end of his, towards the end of his life, he began to take gifts. Shalu b'no harav zal ma zeh avi ki sheni tamcha. Why are you changing your methods? Why are you? His son asked him, "Why are you all of a sudden taking gifts? You didn't used to take gifts. You didn't want any kind of assumption, any appearance of bribery, etc. Why now at the end of your life? Now, why are you? He didn't call it the end of his life, right? Why in your older age? Why now are you accepting gifts? Amar lo dabani should know kizel lo kvir hochachti chet ish asher alpanav k'mitzvah alai b'torah hochiach tochiach v'asher notal alai b'yoter b'tur rav u'minhag. He said, I want you to know that that there was once an usher, a wealthy man in my congregation, and I had to rebuke him about something he did. And it's my job to do according to the Torah. That's the job of a rav. Hine ha'ish hazeh avin li me'az v'ad ato v'chamato ba'ara. He was kolkach. He was very upset with me. Ad shekasher nizdamam iti lepundak echad. Once we met up in a particular inn. Bigesh et nafshi nakachtem kamat salcha umazata biyado lule rachmei Hashem alai. He wanted to kill me, and if it weren't for a miracle of rachmim of Hashem, I wouldn't be alive today. And then I said to my soul, Lo tov hadavar sha'anin mona atzmi milakabel matanod mabale batim shali. It's not good that I'm not taking any gifts from my congregants. Ki al yedei kach kasher yara yachar af echad mehem alive. They become angry at me. Ein lo makom linkom nikmato mimeni ki im lifgoa. Techila. So they won't have any way to get back at me except to kill me if I don't take any gifts. Masha ein kain im echach matanod hanehugod b'Yisrael mabali batim lerav. It is customary for a rabbi to receive some sort of gifts, kindnesses from his congregants. V'lo azeh shachara apo ki yimtze makom linkom nikam mimeni. And now that I, in other words, to relieve some of their anger and disappointment in me, and therefore, then this gift, that they give, well, that they keep and don't give to me, that'll be better than them killing me, right? So says Rav Kornitzer, that story you can apply to what's going on here. Zesh Amar Rabbi Eliezer, ilmali anu tzrichim lahem, lepamim, lemasa, matan. Hayu horgim otanu. There's sometimes, if it weren't for the fact, this is Rabbi Eliezer speaking, that in the Talmud, in the Gemara, in Pesachim. It says that if it weren't for the fact that we would need ignorant people in for business from Amasa Matan, then we would have killed them. They'd have no purpose in life. Masha Enkin Achshav Sha'anu Tzrichim Lahem Lisiyumam Mizonotenu Kipirish Rashi Zal Al Yedei Kach Kasher Yara Sheyidgarzu Aleinu Hine Bayim Aleinu Rak Me'askim Mamon Vayulanu Et Kol Panim Nafshatenu L'Shalal. So as long as we need them for our livelihoods, we need all people. When any of them become angry at us, at us scholars, instead of harming them, they just cut down on their business from them. They just try to hurt them, by parnasa instead of physically. Ubezeh muvan lama nismecha parshat chav daled matanot kahuna lemachlokato shel korach. Ayin Rashi. This fits with the idea of why we have the 24 gifts of the kohen that were mentioned in Parshat Korach right after the rebellion of Korach. It's kind of Rashi says over there. She'amdu bezeh b'shem Chazal. So as we brought over there, you should see over there what he says. Sha'aron kodesh Hashem gora me'alto nichbeda tivchal nafsho milekabel matanot miYisrael ach mekevan shenimtzu mitkanim me'orim al kuhunato gedolato yirash gam hu shitov lekabel mehem af she'al yedei kach lo tigadel kinat ha'am kol kach kasher pirashnu lamala sha'am yikarer dato bezeb amram nafsham shal kol panim b'davar echad tigadel maltam al hakohen. So now we can explain. He says we can explain what it means in our situation here. Why the Torah, why the Gemara in different places, when they talk about this covenant of peace that Pinchas got, this covenant of peace can mean two different things. On the one hand, it's there's a sort of a promise that Pinchas will have some sort of physical shleimut and wholeness. And on the other hand, it's also a promise that he's going to be a kohen, he's going to receive the gifts. Meaning, even though he had just killed somebody, the head of the tribe of Shimon, and the tribe of Shimon wanted to get back at him, but nevertheless, they had another avenue now of doing that without having to resort to actual murder and killing him. Right? They didn't have to kill him to get back at him. They could just now reduce how much they give as their gift, the jaw and the maw and everything else. So this is kind of like a quote-unquote funny explanation, but it actually fits very nicely with the other ideas that we've had, and that is that as long as there's an avenue to channel, and this is how we can take it. Hopefully, we don't plan on killing any rabbis or any scholars anytime soon, but like that statement of Rabbi Elazar in the Gemara. We have an avenue of channeling our anger and our disappointment in things without resorting to violence. That's kind of the idea. Obviously, it's not good to stab people in the back. It's I've been talking about figuratively here, right? Literally, also, of course. But the idea being that indeed. We're not supposed to try to hurt other people, but we should try to find some other way to channel our disappointments in life, and in a way that's not dangerous and doesn't hurt anybody in a permanent way. That could be a lesson we can learn. All right. Let's go on to the next verse. We're going to try to focus quite a bit on this idea. Now that we have Pinchas, and now we know that he's rewarded. The next verse says, "V'haytalo zaro acharav brit kahunat olam." He and his descendants, excuse me, get the reward of constant kahuna, of being the kohanim. Okay. Tachat asher kine kav v'chapra al bnei Yisrael, because of what he did for Hashem and getting forgiven for the Jewish people. Now Rashi there says, so what's this Brit Kahunat Olam, this covenant of eternal priesthood, as it's as would be the translation, everlasting priesthood. Aval pi shekvar nitla kahuna lezaro shel Aaron. Now, Aaron is the only Kohen so far. Aaron and his two sons. Aaron is now deceased at this point. So Elazar and Itamar and their sons are the only living Kohanim. So and by the way, Pinchas was a son of Elazar. So it's an interesting thing that Pinchas isn't already the Kohen. You would think he should already be the Kohen. He's the son of a Kohen. Well, that's the way to become a Kohen, as the old joke says, right? Lo nida ela Aaron ulvanav shenimshuchu imo, but the kahuna was only given to Aaron and his sons at that time, as the verse says. So only 5 people became the kohanim, and utodadehem sheyuldu achar shemachshachatan, and only the children who were born after that point. The ones who were alive at that point did not become Kohanim. Any children born after that point were already children of people who were Kohanim. Aval Pinchas shenolad kodem lechein. Pinchas was born before that. V'lo nimshach lo kol lo bal lichlal kahuna ad kan. That he was not a Kohen until now, until this point. V'chein sheninu bizvachim. This is explained in the Gemara in Zvachim. We just started the Zvachim in Mishnah Yomi, Baruch Hashem. Lo nitkahen Pinchas ad shahargo lezimri. He did not become the Kohen until he killed Zimri. All right, we'll talk more about Zimri in just a moment. Now, the Gurari, that's the Maharal writing on Rashi, has a question, a famous question, and it's worth it just to see his answer before we look at other people's answers to the same question. So we just said that Pinchas was not a Kohen yet because he had not been born. He had been born earlier. And when the Kohanim were made Kohanim, it was only Aaron and his direct sons who were alive at that time, and any of their children from after that point. Not up until then. So Pinchas, who was already alive, the son of Elazar, he did not become the Kohen at this point. But if he would have been born later, he would have been. So says the Gurari, Im Tomer v'lama lo nimshach Pinchas kemo shenimshuchu Aaron. Why? If you want to know why that happened, there's an answer. She'ein moshchin katan. We don't. When a young person is not really fit to be a Kohen, Pinchas ba'otozman katanaya. He was a little kid. Shenimshuchu Aaron vanav. When Aaron and his sons were inaugurated. And that's why he wasn't fit to be a Kohen. And then when he got older, he was not fit to have a unique inauguration just for nothing. They were only inaugurated when the Mishkan was inaugurated. There's no other time later. There's no Kohanic celebration for people when they become old enough to become a kohen. Aval limshoch oto achar kach lo yitakin. V'od yesh lomar, and there's another answer you can give. The miut behemshech yoter adif delo nimshechu ele otan shayu mochrin limshoch. They were fit to be inaugurated, anointed. The Fichach Aaron of Anav, therefore Aaron and his sons, Delo Efshar Belav Hachi, Sharei En Limshoch Aaron Bilchud, not Aaron alone. The Imken Tiya Hakuna Betela, Delo No the Aaron of Banim Achar Hamshecho. So if only Aaron would have been inaugurated and anointed as a Kohen, there wouldn't be any more Kohanim, because he didn't have any children since then. The Fichach Mashach Aaron Uvanav. That's why Aaron and his sons needed to be anointed. Aval b'nei Eliezer v'Itamar the Efshar belohem, and not their sons. The Sharei nodu lahem banim achar himshicho, but they had children afterwards. Yoter adif kishenola b'kedusha. They were born in this sense of holiness. L'chach lo nimshach Pinchas, and Pinchas was not, and that's why he was never inaugurated. Okay. Same question, different perspective. Comes along the Or Gedaliyahu, Rav Gedalia Shor, Rosh Yeshiva Torah V'das, father of my Rosh Yeshiva. So he quotes in the Sefer Or Gedaliyahu, says quotes the Rashi, and he brings up the question, the Maral's question, Lama be'emet lo nimshach Pinchas, why wasn't Pinchas inaugurated? Ayin sham ma'asheteres, he says, go look over there at what he answered. We don't have to, because we just did. Yeah, you're welcome. V'yesh l'taretz al pi yidei ma shehiksha ha'chidusha harim. There's another answer that you can give based on a question of the Chidusha Harim, one of the Ger Rebbes. The question is, Eich nit kahen Pinchas ba b'bor hatur. So it's how do we deal with Pinchas when it comes to something that it says in the Torah? The Torah is the book that preceded the Shulchan Aruch as a code of Jewish law. So in Orach Chaim there it says, Shekohen shaharag et hanefesh, a kohen who kills somebody, afilu bishgaga, even by accident, lo yisa et kapav. It does not serve as a kohen for blessing the Jewish people, which makes sense if you think about it, right? Somebody who created a cut, literally and figuratively, and the Jewish people killed somebody. So how can such a person bless the rest of the congregation with peace? V'kan haya lefichuch shepinchas nitkahen mipnei shaharag et Zimri. And so here we see that maybe this is could be another reason why Pinchas was not a kohen before he killed Zimri. Right? If he would have been a kohen before he killed Zimri, he would have become an ex-kohen. He would have lost his ability to be a kohen from this killing. He quotes, by the way, here different holy books that quote this, the Zohar that says Pinchas min dina pasul kahuna have. He was really, Pinchas should be not allowed to be a kohen. Begin the kanale Kadosh Baruch Hu it's tarich lichsale kahuna. But really Hashem needed him to do this thing. So that's sort of a side point here. It's in brackets for a reason. So Bir Harim, the Chidush Harim explains the Kohen Sharag Pasol Hu Mishum Shah Kohanim Shaychim Midat HaChesed. The reason why a Kohen is exempt, is not allowed to do Birkat Kohanim, is because the whole essence of being a Kohen is to promulgate the characteristic of kindness, of chesed. Diktiv, to mechavu recha leish chasidecha. The verse in Devarim, towards the end of Devarim, where Moshe blesses the Jewish people, the blessing for the Kohanim is that this job, carrying the Urim V'Tumim, that goes to an Ish Chasidecha. It has to go to a person of Chesed. The Kohanim are supposed to be people of Chesed. About Pinchas, Asa B'Shvil Ahavat Yisrael. Why did Pinchas get a reward? Why is it, besides what the reward is, that it's kahuna? He's getting a reward because of his love for the Jewish people. He stopped a plague that would have killed thousands, maybe more. Kemidas hakohen ish chesed. That fits exactly with this characteristic that a kohen should have of chesed. L'chein nit kahen la'achar hamase. H-Shem Dvarim Kadoshim, look over there for his holy words. But the idea again is that ordinarily a kohen who kills by accident, he's not showing that kind of chesed. Pinchas's killing was an act of chesed. It was the greatest chesed. He stopped the plague. He saved lives. If Pinchas would have been a kohen before this, Mishum the haya kohen b'sha'ah shahara Zimri, if he would have been a kohen when he killed the Zimri, haya nifsal af she'asa et hamasa mitzad avad Yisrael, he would have stopped being a kohen because even though he did it out of love, because the halacha is the halacha. We don't try to sparse out why it is, what midah is it, what midah is it characteristic of. If it says you stop, you're no longer able to bless the Jewish people if you're a kohen who killed somebody. Mikomakom din hu nifsal kahuna. Either way, the rule is that cancels out your kahuna. And that's why he became a kohen specifically after this action. Right, because he couldn't have been a kohen before. It's because he did this act for this reason that he actually, ironically, coincidentally, whatever word you want to use, he becomes a kohen through this thing that would have canceled out his kahuna otherwise. So that's why he wasn't a kohen yet. I just thought it would be worth looking into the halacha real quick since we mentioned it. In Shiloh Teshuvat HaShulchani, the author of Ari, I'm gonna write it down. I'll try to put it in the notes. Ember, I'm messing up the name. So he, I apologize. But he writes, he writes about this. This concept of what happens when a kohen kills somebody. So it says here, this is halacha l'maisa, right? As a general rule, a kohen who killed someone is forbidden to participate in the birkat kohanim in the synagogue. It makes no difference whether the victim was a Jew or Gentile. So he's got, by the way, he's got great footnotes here. That's pretty megadim. So that halacha still fits. As the Talmud says, Rabbi Yochanan said, a kohen who has committed manslaughter should not recite birkat kohanim. That's the source of this rule. This ruling is based on the verse, and when you spread your hands, I will turn my eyes away from you. Your hands are filled with blood, which teaches that if a person's hands are filled with blood for having killed another person, God will ignore the blessing he bestows. According to some interpretations, the ban against such a kohen performing birkat kohanim is a churma, stringency, while to others it is a mikar hadin, a matter of law. It is what it is. The ban also applies to kohanim who have killed unintentionally, as we said. That's from the Torah. The only exception is where a kohen killed another person in circumstances that were entirely beyond his control. For example, a kohen who killed someone in the course of a car accident, which he is found to have clearly not been at fault, is not subject to the ban, and continues to perform Birkat Kohanim as usual. If he was negligent, however, such as in the event that he was speeding excessively, ignoring traffic signals, he would indeed be subject to the ban. A Kohen who kills in complete self-defense or as a result of a situation beyond his control is not penalized in any way either. Right? According to some authorities, a Kohen who killed someone unintentionally is permitted to resume performing Birkat Kohanim once he properly repents and atones for his actions. Who says that? That's the Ramah. Other authorities, however, insist that even in this instance, a Kohen should not perform the Birkat Kohanim, even if it might indeed be technically permitted for him to do so. He's quoting here the Yechavet Dat, so that's Rav Avad Yosef. Nevertheless, the halacha is in accordance with the permissive view, especially when it concerns a Kohen who is newly religious. This issue has wide-ranging practical ramifications for Kohanim who... looks like I deleted that. Give me 1 second. Let's try to fix something. Well then. Hate when that happens, don't you? Um, 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 um. Have to really work on getting these right to begin with, so we don't have to have these kinds of delays. I do apologize. Page. Okay. How do I do this? Okay. Do apologize. Here we go. So it says this is especially relevant for Kohanim who serve. Sorry, I can't see. Who serve in the Israeli Defense Force. The authorities discuss whether a Kohen, a soldier who killed an enemy in the line of duty, is permitted to perform Birkat Kohanim. According to most authorities, such a soldier is indeed permitted to do so. As Rabbi Shlomo Aviner says, since he has killed defending the nation and the land of Israel, he is exactly the right person to bestow a blessing upon us. Additionally, such a situation is deemed to be a situation beyond one's control. This includes tragedies of friendly fire, mistaken identity. Other authorities disagree and rule that an Israeli soldier who has killed for whatever reason is comparable to King David. Although King David killed for legitimate reasons, he was still banned from participating in the building of the Beit HaMikdash as a result. Another interesting case that is discussed in halachic literature is that of a baby who is circumcised by a Moel who is a Kohen and later dies as a result of the circumcision. In such a tragic situation, it is virtually unanimous that the Moel is not qualified, is not disqualified from performing Birkat Kohanim. This is because it is assumed that the baby's death was a result of a number of different factors and complications and not as a direct result of the circumcision. The same is true for a patient who dies while under the care of a doctor who is a Kohen. In fact, one may be lenient in any situation where a death is not a direct or immediate result of the Kohen's actions. It is interesting to note that there are those who argue that a Kohen who has publicly embarrassed another person should be banned from performing Birkat Kohanim, as our sages equate embarrassing another person with murder. Although the halacha is not in accordance with this view, a Kohen would be well advised to be especially careful never to embarrass another person. Just a moment. It's all right. Okay. Okay. So, great. I'll try to fix that later. Um, let's so let's go on. Next verse, next two verses. We're really very top heavy here today in the Parsha class. We're going to focus quite a bit on this the situation with Pinchas. And it says next verse, chapter 25, verse 14 and 15 says, Shem Ha'ish Yisrael Hamuke Asher Huka et HaMidyanit Zimri ben Salu Nasi Beit Av L'Shimoni. The name of the Jewish man, because it didn't say his name at the end of last week's parsha. It just said that a Jewish man took a Midianite woman I think I said Moabite earlier, but it's Midianite woman into the tent, and his name is Zimri ben Salu. He was um, the prince of the tribe of Shimon. V'shem Haisha Hamuka Hamidyanit, and the Midianite woman who was killed, her name is Cozbi bat Tzur Rosh Umot Beit Av Midianhu. She was the daughter of Tzur, who was the head of some group of a family in Midian. So also, basically, she was a princess, for what it's worth. In Nachal Kedumim, the Chidah brings that if you look carefully, you'll notice that these two verses are said differently. So let's look in the English real quick. The name of the Israelite man who was killed, the one who was killed with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, son of Salu. The name of the Midianite woman who was killed. So far, so good. But it doesn't say who was killed with the Jewish man, right? The Jewish man is one who was killed with a Midianite woman, and his name was Zimri. The woman was a Midianite woman, and her name was Cozbi. It doesn't say that she was with a Jewish man. So why is the difference in how it's described by H-Shem in His Torah? So the Chidah explains, very important, in a sense, very obvious. Perish kishahaya yachad im Midianit, the im pirish Zimri ena yachol lahorgo Pinchas mikinam pugim she'en kanayim pugim hainu kishahem biyachad about im pirush v'horgo nahargim alav kama shekatuv b'shas lekach diktek katuv lomar isha huka et Midianit. So asher huka et Midianit. So when it comes to the crime for which Zimri is killed, it's because he was alone with this non-Jewish woman. Now, ordinarily, you can't just go in and kill somebody for that. There needs to be a court case. It needs to be, etc. There's a lot to do. We're not the Taliban. However, there is this idea of kanayim pogim bo. And we've talked about this in previous years. The idea of zealotry and how and when it works. It's a very, very, very specifically defined activity. It's not in all situations. One of the famous ideas is that Pinchas had to take a spear to kill them. It's because he wasn't already carrying a spear, as some of the rabbis explain. In other words, he wasn't a person looking to do damage and looking to do violence. He wasn't like these Bible thumping anti-abortion activists or something, was looking for somebody to kill to preserve life. However that works out in their heads. But we're talking about somebody who didn't want to do any kind of violence. He had no weapon on him. And all of a sudden he saw this, and it just riled him up. And for the good of the people, he went and took the spear and did what he had to do. That's at least part of one of the restrictions for how and when a zealot is allowed to act out as a zealot. But that needs to be done for the situation for a Jewish man. V'chol kibel dina kativ v'shem ha'isha hamuka midyanit diyesh laharga afilu kishehi levada. This Midianite woman did not need the same degree of halachic jurisprudence for her to be killed. Rambam, as it says in Rambam, b'shat kala al yada v'cheinu iti shekaftu v'paroshim shalom. So he quotes he quotes the Rambam. I thought I had that here, but I guess I don't. Yeah, looks like I don't. But he quotes the Rambam, who writes that in Isure Bia 12:6, Rambam writes that she could be killed um, on a much lower, like I said, halachic or judicial level of proof, which we, by the way, see in next week's parsha in Matot, where Hashem where Moshe tells the Jewish people that the soldiers are allowed to kill the Midianite women, and there's no court, there's no judge, there's no jury. He's just they're allowed to go out and kill them for their behavior without on a much lower level of adjudication. All right, let's finally get out of that topic and get into the next. The next thing that we talk about is quite a bit of the parsha is the second aliyah that lists the Jewish people. And famously, we've spoken about this in previous years as well. There's a hey and a yud that's associated with each name. The hey and the yud are part of Hashem's name, yud and hey. And Hashem, by putting his name onto each tribe, is basically saying that these are holy people. These are holy tribes. Chapter 26, verse 7 is such an example. It says, Ela mishpachot haruveni, instead of not the families of the Reuvenite, which again has a hey in the beginning of Reuven and a yud at the end of Reuven. Vayu pekudehem shlosha abayim elef ushva me'ot ushloshim. And then he does the math, and it turns out there are 43,730. Asks the Chizkuni commentary on Rashi as well. Might have been a good idea to have Rashi here being quoted. He points out that that usually it says this verse differently. It would say these are the final numbers, and these are the sons of. But it doesn't say that here. Here's just the families of Reuven. So it explains the Hiskuni, Hatlat Yud Hey Al Shem Ein Nikan Mishum Shevet Rak Beruven Shimon Zvulun. So Shimon, Reuven, Shimon, and Zevulun, those three tribes of the 12 tribes, they are not described the same way as the other tribes. Again, because the Yud and Hey were not added at the end of that verse. So it's like I said before, right? No. So they do have the Yud and Hey, like Reuven does at the end here. The Ha Reuveni. So it says Ha Shim'i for Shimon, Zvulani for Zvulun. It has a Hey and a Yud, and the end count as well. That's not true for the other 9 tribes. Do the math there in my head, right? Why is that? So the Chizkuni explains, Beruven and Shimon, K'dei lefayes datam lekarbam acharei shayu nezufim Beruven bilbu yitzuye aviv v'Shimon maaseh Zimri. So these tribes needed some sort of calming down after they felt a little bit not so good because of their behavior. Reuven, because of the crime of moving his father's Yaakov's bed all the way back in Bereshit, and Shimon, because of the act at the beginning of this week's parsha with the act of Zimri, the prince of Shimon, who had to be killed by Pinchas for his sin with Cozbi. So those are why those two tribes needed extra sort of an extra pickup, right? So Hashem is trying to give a little boost, an ego boost to these tribes. What about Zevulun? Zevulun al yidei sheholech kama pamim b'makom sakana. Zvulun needed an extra boost because Zvulun very regularly risked their lives for the sake of the Jewish people in the different battles that are described in Sefer Yehoshua. The Ktiv Zevulun am charaf nafsho lamut. So the tribe of Shimon is praised as being very aggressive, very eager to prove themselves in battle and protect the rest of the Jewish people. That's a quote from the Song of Devorah in Shoftim. Okay, let's go on. We've got some time left. Chapter 27, verse 21. So the next important incident. Oh, we're kind of skipping the whole story of Tzlavchad's daughters this year. In previous years, we've spoken quite a bit about them and their greatness and their incredible intelligence, wisdom, and if you're interested in learning more about them, I highly recommend previous classes on our YouTube channel on the Parshat Pinchas playlist. Chapter 27, verse 21. Here, though, we're gonna go right into where Moshe asks for a leader after him to lead the Jewish people, and Hashem chooses Yehoshua. That happens in this week's parsha as well. And the last thing that happens in this week's parsha are the holidays. God willing, we'll have a few things we can say about that as well. But right now, let's talk about Yehoshua. It says chapter 27, verse 21, that Lifnei Elazar HaKohen Yamod V'shal Lo B'mishpat Ha'urim Lifnei Hashem Al Piv Yetze Al Piv Yavo V'hu V'chol B'nei Yisrael Ito V'chol Ha'edah. Second. Can't do that. Okay. So he shall present himself to Elazar the kohen, the Yamod, and he'll stand there. And Sha'alo Mishpat Ha'urim, and the kohen will ask from the Urim Betumim what to do. Lifnei Hashem Al Piv Yetzu Al Piv Yavo. They'll do everything according to the way Hashem says. Him and all the Jewish people and the entire congregation, they're all going to listen to what he says. So the Chidushe Hagriz, right? Rav Yitzhak Zev Soloveitchik asks the question. He quotes this verse. He quotes the previous verses as well, all about this Urim. Tzarch bin, we need to know. He says we need to understand the Ma'ik Tiv Pasuk Zer Lefnei Eliezer HaKohen Yamod. Why does it say he has to stand in front of Eliezer the Kohen? Elazar the Kohen. Really, he can stand in front of the Kohen, any Kohen, whoever the Kohen is. Pinchas the Kohen, right? Shimon the Kohen. Why specifically Elazar? A parsha zu al smichad Yehoshua is a shaychud yesh lezeh. So this isn't about Elazar. This is about Yehoshua. And Yehoshua, whoever the Kohen is going to be, Yehoshua is going to be asking for his spiritual guidance to the Urim V'Tumim. All right. So that's really the question. So he says that like this: Nira, it seems the hine Echad hachilukim shebein Moshe Rabbeinu l'shar hanavim. You have to know that there's a difference between Moshe and all other prophets. This is fundamental Jewish idea. This is one of the 13 principles of faith. The Shar Hanavim lo hayu yicholim l'sh'ol be'atzma. The other prophets did not have the ability to ask questions on their own. Rak ne'emar lahem. Hashem spoke to them. V'rak dehem hayu mitchonenim lekabelet nevuah. And only when they are, fitting to accept prophecy. Kamashikativ Rambam, B'Yesodot Torah. Rambam writes about this. Again, we have Rambam twice already today. Aval l'shol lo yachlu. But to ask, they had no ability to do. Aval b'Moshe k'tiv v'yakriv Moshe et mishpatam lifnei Hashem. Only regarding Moshe can it be said, and as we had in this week's parsha, when the daughters of Tzlafchad asked about what the law is regarding female inheritance, Moshe asked Hashem. You could just say, hey, God, I have a question for you. No other prophet can do that. Amdu ma yitzav Hashem lachem. Stand and find out what Hashem wants from you, as it says. But Moshe had the ability to ask as well. Ayin fi zeh mi'yesodot Torah. Ayin be pirush. I don't know who he's quoting here, but it's on Sanhedrin. So when Yehoshua had a question to ask, even though it was there were certain things that were given to him. Elazar, one of the things that was given to him was this ability to go to Elazar, and he would ask from the Urim V'Tumim. He had no ability to ask on his own questions from Hashem. And this is something that Rashi also writes, where it talks about how Aaron stood between the living and the dead during that plague, and how he stopped it using the ketoret, the incense. Achaz et malach yamidu al korcho, that the angel had to tell him the secret by force. Ayin el hamalach hanach li la'asot shlichuti amalo Moshe tuni achav al yedecha. So Moshe had the ability to force angels to tell him what to do, to get angels to tell them the secrets. That's something that Moshe had the ability to do. Ein lomar ani shluchi shel makom v'ata shluchi shel Moshe. So he can't say, you are the I'm the messenger of Hashem and you're the messenger of Moshe. Ein lomar ein Moshe omar klum. Moshe didn't say anything from his own heart. Moshe only spoke what Hashem told him to say. Im ein ata ma'amin harei HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe al petach ol moed ba imi v'sha'al v'chule ad kan l'shona. So again, the idea here is nobody has the ability like Moshe did to just say, I have a question for you, Hashem. Can you please tell me what to do? Moshe could do that, and we see that in this week's parsha, as I said. But Yehoshua did not, and that's why in this parsha, where we're talking about the inauguration or the responsibilities that Yehoshua is going to have, so here also we're going to mention Elazar. Elazar is not just a minor character. Elazar is here to point out he's there to prove this point that Yehoshua does not have the ability to go and ask for Hashem's advice without some sort of a method, some sort of vehicle to do that. And that vehicle for him is the Urim V'Tumim of Elazar. All right. Last piece for today. Like I said, it's going to deal with the last part of the parsha, which deals with the holidays. The parsha Pinchas is what we read on the Yomim Tovim. That is the Torah reading, and this part has to do with Sukkot. Right? It says there, chapter 29, verse 34. Right? So 33, the Lamed Gimel, Chavtet Lamed Gimel says Minchatam Niskehem leparim leelim v'lakvasim b'misparam kamishpatam. So with all other sacrifices, it ends with kamishpat, as the law is. Kamishpatam means as their law is. So it says, the translation would be the minchatam, the meal offerings, niskehem, the libations, the parim, the elim, the bulls, the rams, the kvasim, the lambs, the misparam, and all of their numbers, kimishpatam, are like their laws. Their laws. Who are they? Like the laws of the elim, the kvasim, the parim, like whose laws? And like I said, every other holiday besides here, it just says kamishpat. So it's very unusual, and sometimes you'll see the Baal Koreh might even struggle that it's sort of different than the other verses. It becomes sort of repetitive. Kamishpat, kamishpat, kamishpat. And here it says kamishpatam with this extra mem at the end. To explain, very short piece here from Rav Chaim Kanievsky in Talmud Dekra. He quotes this verse. It says, "Bashvi shel Chag nemar kamishpatam." The seventh day of the Chag, the seventh day of Sukkot, we say kamishpatam. Ukvar darshu chazal al zeh. The rabbis already gave their own explanation for this. But here's another explanation. Ayin le'el ol l'ramez de Hoshana Rabbahu. That this is, when do we say this? When is what happens on the last day of Sukkot? We have a name for that holiday. The last day of Sukkot has its own name. It's called Hoshana Rabbah. And according to Jewish tradition, according to certainly the ideas of the Zohar, it's not just a regular holiday day. It's also the end of judgment for the non-Jewish world. Just like Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur is the end of judgment, more or less, for the Jewish world. So the non-Jewish world is judged or finished being judged on Hoshana Rabbah. So says Rav Chaim, Hu Gemar Yom Hadin Shel Kulam. This is the end of the judgment for everyone. Like even the Gentiles are judged at this point on this day. Kida Amar Bezar, as it says in Zohar, Lekach, therefore, Nemar Kan Kimishpatam, like their law, their judgment is being decided on this amazing, super powerful day of Hoshana Rabbah. Unfortunately, a day that outside of the yeshiva world isn't as celebrated as maybe it should be. In yeshivas, in the yeshiva world, they stay up all night on Hoshana Rabbah. We have extra prayers. There's shuls that struggle with a minyan. It's quite a long service. People stick around for the hitting the twigs on the ground or whatever. But that's not the main thing about Hoshana Rabbah. It's an interesting custom for sure, but that's not what the whole thing's about. The whole thing's about, this is the end of judgment. All of the whole year and everything else, the coming year, all of that is packaged and completed, stamped, sealed, and approved by the court upstairs, all on this very, very special holy day. And if we keep up with our midot of chesed, as we learned about in this week's parsha, and if we are able to channel our energies properly, and if we if we do as H-Shem says and follow His guidance, and we'll see, God willing, that our judgment as well is a good judgment, and we'll be judged for a good year and a good life. Ad 120 Shana. Thank you for listening, and have a great rest of your week.